Hey guys, what's up? It's Rolly here, coming to you today with Something RXC, Something RX. Today I'm joined by Shaun. How are you going today, man?
I'm
Yeah, good. Basically, to anyone who doesn't know, tell us a little bit about yourself, Shaun, like with your swimming background and everything.
Yeah, so I'm the head coach of the Norwood Swimming Club here in Adelaide. This is our home pool where we are. So we run a program. We've got about 150 squad swimmers in it that are competitive, and that runs from all the way from about 10 or 9 all the way through to our senior athletes, which are 22, 23. So we look to develop towards the ultimate goal of everyone going to swim at a national representative level, whether that's Olympic, World Championships, Commonwealth Games and those sort of things. But we also go all the way down to obviously the juniors as well, so getting out.
Yeah. Now, how did you get into swimming?
I got into swimming when I was young. My parents were into fishing, and the rule was that I had to learn to swim, and I think that was their biggest regret in the end, is that we took it up as a sport that we loved. I did it all the way through till I was 20. I was fortunate enough to represent school, club, state and national water polo, so I got a long way in the sport, and then it just took me through to coaching. I started out as a learn to swim instructor, and just kind of built my way into the role and loved doing it.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people in the world don't know how to swim.
Yep.
What's that process like to get somebody to, become adaptable in the pool? And
yeah, look, I mean, it's not a natural movement. It's not running. It's not riding. It's a totally different ball game. So I think the key is for anyone is to make sure that they have a really good understanding of relaxation in the water. It's unlike other things where it takes effort, where now you look for lack of effort to find efficiency. Anything that causes tenseness in your body can cause you to sink. So we're looking for relaxation, and engaging the right muscles to make sure you move mechanically the right way. But it's not an easy process. It's not a quick process, and the older you get, the harder it is. So.
Yeah. And why do you think that is? Because that happens in a lot of different disciplines in fitness. A lot of people, there's so many different skills in sports where, the older you are, it's almost like you're a bag of cement falling down to the bottom of that pool.
Yeah, I mean, from a young age, we actually build into our bodies certain muscle movements and neuromuscular activities that just happens by habit in our own bodies. And because of those habits that we create, it is very hard to break them. If you start swimming at 1, 2 or 3, they are part of your habits you learn for your whole life.
Yeah.
If you start learning those habits at 37 or 40 or whatever age it is, it interferes with your actual learning process of how it needs to happen. So compared to running or riding, we don't get a choice of when we want to breathe in our sport. You need to breathe at a certain time within a stroke to be able to make sure that you keep your efficiency. So you can't just go, I'm really tired, I'll take my breaths faster. That just doesn't happen. So you need to learn to be able to control the balance between oxygen and usage and output as well.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, one of the interesting things about swimming and, trying to get good at it. You have to become a master at your breathing and, master at controlling your intensity. And, as people get better at swimming and the intensity gets higher, how do you manage that? How do you manage to get the most out of you can with the little oxygen you're getting?
I think that we do a large proportion of our training in an aerobic capacity, so at a low intensity. And mainly because our sport does take a lot of muscle memory, as I was saying before, that you need to be able to train into your body those things. So doing a lot of low intensity work allows you to build an aerobic capacity to be able to then challenge them at a higher intensity for shorter periods. So, there are obviously events within our sport that last quite a long time, but 90% of our sport is done in an aerobic or anaerobic capacity. So it's an important part of our development, and I think that's where, no matter what age you swim at, the aerobic capacity is important.
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't have swimming integrated into their training, what are some things how can swimming help how can swimming help your overall fitness, especially if you're a CrossFitter and you're looking to improve that overall fitness?
I can tell you that swimming is the #1 sport for improving aerobic capacity. There is no sport that you can do that allows you to increase it as quickly because of that not being able to choose when you breathe. So your lungs then take more of an impact in both oxygen deprivation and then oxygen increase when you breathe in. So your lung capacity will grow, which means your overall aerobic capacity will grow. so you get a better VO2 max. So in terms of your aerobic capacity of CrossFit, where you need to do events that are any longer than 1, 2, 3 minutes, you are then into an aerobic stage of a race. You can't do all that in anything shorter. So to be able to improve that base, swimming is a great way to do so. And as we said, good swimmer, bad swimmer, you don't necessarily have to be able to do it really well, but it will improve your base of what you can do.
Yeah.
And I suppose the good option is that there's a lot of variety in how you can train. Like CrossFit, I think we do have shorter stuff, longer stuff, different strokes, and different intensities. So you can find something specific for the way you want to train. If you want to try and replicate something for another sport in the water, you can do so to a level as well.
Yeah. And what about vice versa? Like, let's say you are a swimmer looking to improve your aerobic capacity. How can you improve your aerobic capacity in the pool, outside of the pool? What are the things that swimmers normally tend to do?
Look, we do a few different things. I think we do a little bit of running, mainly because on the flip side of the coin, your heart rate can stay higher for a lot longer. So a 20 to 30 minute zone at a little bit higher intensity heart rate, and get a little bit better result from that. Outside of that, we do a lot of just longer generalized stuff at points in the season. So we obviously build from a low intensity base at the start of a season, which is a lot of aerobic work, to the end of the season where it's high intensity, not a lot of aerobic work, building towards peak power and fitness. So, I think that running's probably our biggest one. We do a little bit of bike riding, but I think that for our sport, because there is so much work done at aerobic level, there's not huge amounts we do outside of the pool. It's probably less than 10% overall.
Another thing that I've noticed with training swimmers is like you develop a pretty huge level of pulling strength. For if you're a swimmer or you're looking to get better at swimming, what are some other things that you should be looking at training?
Look, I think that you need to be able to train your general strength. In the water, your strength to weight ratio is super important. So you could be extremely strong, but if you can't pull your own body weight through the water effectively, your strength is irrelevant to what we're looking for. So your own general strength to weight is super important, but then also having explosive power as well. So obviously we've started to introduce CrossFit into our training a little bit, and that's been from the point of view of repeat effective efforts, explosive efforts on a repetitive basis. So there is that aerobic anaerobic factor, but it's also allowing us to tap into that general strength side that we probably can't practice often enough in the swimming pool. There's points, we have a 25 meter pool, so if we wanted to do some explosive work on the walls and trying to work fast, that can only happen sort of every 30 seconds. Whereas if we want to train that to be more powerful, more explosive, I might want that to happen every 5 seconds. It's really hard to find to do in the water, and that's why we transition it out of the water.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing that I find really curious is when you start swimming and when you're trying to get better at it, what's the different ways that you can skin the cat? Do you work on lots of smaller sets? Do you go for volume at the start? Do you go for intensity? What's the rule of thumb?
I think my rule of thumb that I work off is, number one is when you start off, is trying to work on your technique as best as you can. Being able to improve when you haven't had much of a base early on creates habits that you can change really easily. So after that, we start with a lot of longer, slower stuff. And it's not necessarily starting at the longest point and getting shorter. It might start at a point where you might say we're going to do 100 meters at a time, and repeat that for however many factors, and then increase that to 150 and 200. So early on in a season, we might go, we're looking to do only 15 strokes a lap, and we're just going to practice that 100 meters at a time. And when we can do that consistently enough, we might increase the distance to the next level. But hold the speed. That's the most important for us. It's holding technique now, maintaining the speed.
With the higher level swimmers that you guys coach and train, what sort of volume? Like, what's the difference between somebody who's really good at swimming and somebody who's starting like volume wise in their training?
Look, as someone who is at an elite level swimmer would train probably 8 to 9 sessions a week, averaging probably 5,500 meters to 6,000 meters a session. So and that's pretty consistent over the whole season. There's some points that it does drop down, but you would say so you're looking at anywhere between 40 and 50 k's every week. with some high points. So we had a block earlier in the season was nearly 100 Ks in a week.
Yeah.
And then in the next few weeks we dropped down to 20. So, but overall as an average, it's about 50 Ks a week. The beginner swimmer would look at, I would think if you could do 20 laps as a consistent base to start with and build to 40 laps, that's a really good effort to start with. And I don't think that it's all about starting small and trying to improve to the point that that you're consistently happy with. So again, start off with 1 lap at a time, repetitions, and build your way to where you can hold that for a longer point, not just go to the 8 or 10 laps and your techniques.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome, Shaun. All right, guys, we're going to take a small break. We're going to come back and keep talking about swimming. So the other thing we want to try and touch on a little bit is basically, people like, the legends of the sport. Who are some of the legends of the sport in swimming?
Look, I think the number one person that's probably hot on everyone's lips and knowing is Michael Phelps. Clearly he's the most successful Olympian now in history, and what he's done to change the sport in the last 15 years or 10 years has been massive. And he's put the US is clearly the biggest swimming nation we've had, but he is by far one of the biggest celebrities they've had now, and really put swimming back on the map, world swimming wise. And, everyone aspires to be a Michael Phelps now. The name Ian Thorpe is big in Australia, but the next generation has sort of missed that. And we have some other great Australian swimmers coming up and moving around, like Kate Campbell. But generally, I think Michael Phelps is probably the hottest name we're going to have around for a while until someone really breaks into that point of view again.
So to give people some sort of context, what are some of the things that Michael Phelps has achieved, and give that to the in context to like the general swimmer?
Yeah. So Michael Phelps, he's won 20 Olympic gold medals, but in general, most people will make an Olympic event maybe 1 or 2 or 3 for an individual Olympics. He made 8 events and won 8 gold medals, so it's a massive achievement in general. But if we put him back into relative terms, his swimming ability is hugely above the average person. What he was able to complete, he swims 50 meters butterfly or 100 meters butterfly in 49 seconds.
Now, what would an average person take?
I'd hope that the average person could probably swim 2 laps in about 50 seconds. So he's doing 4 laps of the hardest stroke essentially, and the same time you're doing 2 laps flat out of another stroke. So he really does take it to another level. And the good thing is that he's now starting to be pegged back by others. So the world is getting faster, which is a good thing. And we've but he's certainly had a big impact on how we go about that.
To different, it's in the world of weightlifting, for example, it's talked about all the time that different nations train very differently. So the Russians train differently to the Bulgarians, who train differently to the Americans. And is the same true in swimming, or?
Absolutely. I think that we all want to try and steal each other's ideas at some stage or another.
Like the secret Chinese swimming technique.
But I think every country has their differences. Australia, because of our population size, we train, I would say, extremely different to somewhere like the US does. The US has a large population base, and they have a huge high volume system, and then build themselves to have not a bigger pool of swimmers at the end, but a far stronger aerobic capacity wise at an earlier age. Whereas I think swimming in Australia, we build up our aerobic capacity over the time. The Japanese, who are probably they have Tokyo Olympics in 2020, they've made some really big inroads in what they're trying to do. They're very methodical about preparation and technical, and the aspirations of being the best in a turn, or being the best technically to hold their technique. And then you sort of get the Russians and the Eastern Europeans, who are probably a little bit like the Americans, but they do things very in-house. They're very enclosed. You don't get too much information about what they're doing. The Chinese are an interesting one. They've gone down the Australian path. They've used a lot of the Australian methods in the past, using Australian coaches, and probably taken a little bit of their practice and doing a lot of training in Australia. And then you have the French, who do something completely different again. So yeah, it is very diverse over the
Yeah.
whole world. But you know, we only have 5 strokes to choose from, so
Yeah.
or 4 strokes.
Can't be that different at the end of the
can't
day.
be that different at the end
Yeah.
of the day. But there is certainly everyone's methodology from juniors to seniors certainly changes a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I know this is always like a hot topic in weightlifting and CrossFit and a lot of fitness sports. How prevalent are drugs and steroids in the world of
Yeah, look,
swimming?
we'd be lying to say they're not there. I think that the thing that our sport has been able to do really, really well is hold the highly competitive nations super clean.
Yeah.
So the Australians, the Chinese, the Japanese, and the Americans that traditionally have had very, very minimal issues with drug cheating.
Yeah.
So it's meant that the countries that are coming through as the Chinese or the Russians, that they have had quite a few people, test positive over the time. So the good thing is that it hasn't probably sweltered and made a really negative impact on our sport because the best countries have still been able to keep themselves away from that. But it is a big issue. We have a lot of people looking for that 0.2 of a second and those sort of things.
Yeah.
It can mean a lot of money. Our sport doesn't have a lot of money as an individual, so people are looking to find a way to get themselves to a point.
Yeah, make themselves stand out.
Make themselves stand out, and unfortunately, the testing systems across the world are very different. In each, we're all under the same code, but the restrictions are, super tricky depending on what country you're trying to access as well.
Yeah. No, definitely. Who are standouts that come to mind when you think of like Norwood, which is the club that we're in right now?
Yeah, look, we've been really fortunate. We've got a good group of individuals that are starting to come through now. We've gone through a large transition process over the last couple of years and getting some senior swimmers back to the team. Look, we've got a couple of exciting Paralympic swimmers, which is again another whole topic of where how they train, and they do similar things, but we have potentially 4 swimmers who are going to make next year's Rio Paralympics, and a kid called Liam Beckwith is only young. He's pretty exciting. He's going to be up and coming. We've got another kid called James who's on a senior team as well. So we've got a couple of Paralympic guys, but we're really excited about a couple of young guys. A girl called Abby Duncan. She's just broken a couple of state records this season, and she looks like she could really improve. And another kid called Josh. I think that he's got long-term potential in what he's doing. He's been able to really improve over a longer period of time, and he's still pretty raw in terms of where he sits at for the sport. We're not our peak development is until mid-20s, early 20s. So these guys are still 16, 17, 18. So they've got 3 or 4 more years of solid preparation or growth in them before we see them peaking. But they're showing all the right signs at the same time.
Now, I think that's really interesting because we obviously come from the world of CrossFit where people want they want to be like Rich Froning and like the stars at the moment as soon as they can in 1 year's time. And CrossFit gives you this illusion where like you can do it, but in reality you can't. Just so far you have no idea. Now I know how long swimmers train. They 10 to 14 hours a week. Would you say that's
I think that
like elite
elite swimmers in the water, we're doing 8 2-hour sessions, so there's 16 hours in the water plus all their dry land. You're looking between 20 and 24 hours of training a week over a whole week. So
and how many years does it take to peak with that?
Look, with the average age of the Olympian was 24 for males last time and 22 for females, and they start swimming at 6, 5. So you're talking 17 or 18 years of solid preparation, and we have to be, it's a really delicate sport, and we need to sell the long-term message because as you say, like CrossFit, people believe that you can make it in 1 or 2 years, and there's a lot of disappointing moments in our sport, a lot of disappointing moments in terms of you can go prepare for the biggest meet of the year and get sick the week before. And there's only that one chance to be able to do it. So there are a lot of times it doesn't go exactly the way you want to, but that's why we sell the long-term message, because you do have a long period of time to get this right.
Get better. And and that's something that we want people to take away with that. That's the reality for most things in life. You don't have 1 year, you don't have 2 years, you have your rest of it, this is your chance. From when you decide right now is when I'm going to dedicate myself to being the best and good at something, you have from then on till as long as you can to do your best effort.
Absolutely, and the good thing about all sports is that you do have that period of time, and I think our physical capabilities don't really peak until our mid-40s, you know, in general. You know, like the thing about our sport is swimming is your aerobic capacity decreases as you get older. You know, like everything, but your general strength goes up. So, you know, in 2008 Olympics, we were fortunate enough to have a 40-year-old female win an Olympic gold medal. You know, and just proves that you can do it. You know, if you get everything right, you look after yourself, and you actually commit yourself to being specific about your goal, you can do it. And I think that is really important. And as this next generation comes through, if you're anywhere between 16 and being born right now, your development is going to be even later. And that's just because of the way the world is now mechanically moving. You know, things are lasting longer, we're working longer, days are longer, the hours, so things are going to take a little longer to develop. We think it's going to happen faster. You know, our world is building to be faster, 3D printers, mobile phones, but as humans, we're actually starting to develop slower physically, I truly believe.
Definitely. Now, tell us a little about the club that we're in right now. It's the Norwood Swimming School.
So this is our Norwood Swim School. So this we have about 2,000 kids come through here a week. We have adult programs and plenty of other things. And as I said, we sort of develop a swim squad. We have junior squads of about 500 swimmers, and that funnels into sort of that top 120. So we've been around 35 years or so. As I swam here as a junior swimmer, and the good thing is, when I walked into this pool here, it was a very basic pool, and we've actually been able to develop it over the last 10 to 12 years to be a really strong centre. And we have a goal of, you know, really trying to get as many people on national teams in that 2020 period as we can. And the good thing is we've got a lot of support behind us. You know, the club, the swim school, we all work closely together to be able to sort of get ourselves to a point where in a smaller state as such. You know, we're heavily dominated by the eastern states, like most sports, but you know, we're really on a good path to be able to improve to get to the next level. So.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Shaun, for your time.
Cheers. Thanks for
and thanks for watching again, guys. This has been Something RX today with Shaun.
Thanks.
Take care.